Welcome to another edition of Century 21's podcast, Property Done Properly. This week we are in the company of Century 21 UK Royalty. We have Nick Faulkner, the owner of the Century 21 UK licence, with us today. Good morning, Nick. How are you?
Good morning. I'm very well. Royalty I don't know about, but never mind. We'll sketch over that bit.
Excellent. So for those, obviously this has a wide reach, the podcast. For those people out there who don't know who you are and what you do, just give us a little bit of background history.
Yeah, with pleasure. I'm Nick Faulkner. I qualified as a chartered surveyor more years ago than I care to remember. I've spent 30 years or so of my career specialising in leasehold and asset management work in a succession of businesses. I have acquired Century 21 UK about 18 months ago because I wanted to diversify a little bit, but still keep within the real estate world. And it's been a fun 18 months, and I'm looking forward to building the brand in the UK.
Excellent. So in regards to building the brand, where have you spent the last week? Where were you last week?
Oh, it's a tough gig. Somebody's got to do it. So last week I was in Mexico. So Century 21 as a global entity have two conferences a year. One in the spring is usually in the States. I didn't attend that one. And then they have an autumn, or as they like to refer to it, a fall conference. Yeah. And this was in Cancun in Mexico. And in attendance were basically 24, 25 countries from around the world. So Century 21 is across about 85 countries. So a good 30% or so were represented in Mexico.
Fantastic. What was your, we often get asked when we do training things or we go to conferences, what was the biggest takeaway from that particular event for you?
The biggest takeaway was the global movement of people. It was staggering when I was talking to different countries, how they either have huge numbers of people leaving them or joining them. And it's all often from individual countries. That possibly the one that really fired my brain the most was Canada, who this year have taken 700,000 people from India in 1 year.
That's amazing. That's amazing. So just when it comes to people moving to the UK, where are these buyers coming from? Where are we seeing a majority of the UK overseas buyers coming from in our marketplace?
Well, it's quite interesting because in the UK, of course, particularly in central London, they reckon somewhere between 50% and 60% of all buyers in central London come from abroad. These tend to be really from across the scale because we're talking about considerable amounts of foreign money flowing in because frankly, the UK is seen as a safe haven. We must always remember that whilst we have some levels of political changes and general election coming up within the next year, etc., we are still an incredibly stable economy in a world where that is relatively unusual. Is seen as a safe haven for your investments. So we have a lot of foreign money flowing into central London still. It's across the piece, I'd say, as a country. I mean, there's something like 3 million people in Hong Kong who've got the right to settle in the UK. That was announced, if everybody remembers, about 4 or 5 years ago.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
A fraction of those have so far arrived. And so you've got a lot of Hong Kong Chinese coming in. You still have people coming in. There's 60, 70,000 Albanians coming into this country to work every year. And with the health service, the care sectors, etc., recruiting in these countries, it's across the piece. We still have an enormous flow of people from India, Pakistan, and the subcontinent across the UK because of our historical connections.
Yeah, absolutely. Where do you see the UK hotspots? Obviously, a lot of buyers go into the London market, but aside from London, where else do you see these people that are coming in relocating to?
I think that's that is an incredibly difficult question to answer. I had not appreciated until our own UK conference just about a month ago now that the Sutton Coldfield Century 21 office just outside of Birmingham had done 38 lettings to Hong Kong Chinese in the last year. I had no idea it was one of their preferred locations, but it self-evidently is. I don't think necessarily there are any areas which are not hotspots, particularly as long as they are reasonable urban centres. I'm not suggesting that if you were to find a small village outside of Cornwall, whether it would be inundated, but certainly you have got to look at every urban area as a potential place where it will attract people. Certainly huge tracts around London, Essex, Hertfordshire are attracting a great many Albanians and Polish. A number of boroughs, Royal Borough Kingston particularly, is attracting a great many Hong Kong Chinese. I've said about Sutton Coldfield, but you will find areas like Leeds, Leicester, Manchester attracting people from all over the world.
Excellent. So obviously our international network's going to help find these people. What can I would say our offices, this goes out, say, to lots of different people throughout the industry, but what can we do as agents to assist these people to make sure that we find them the right properties?
That's quite a thought-provoking question again, actually, because I think we need to consider starting helping these people. And let's be quite clear, the UK has 700,000 net migration a year. Now, if we take out the 40,000 or so who park for political issues coming across on boats, you have 650,000 net, which probably translates to about 900,000 gross people entering this country totally legally with absolutely every right to stay. And they could be coming in from China for university placements. They could be coming in from India. They could be coming in, as I say, from Albania, from Poland. I think from a Century 21 perspective, one of the things we need to consider is how we actually start to have a dialogue with these people in their own countries before they leave, so that we can then funnel their requirements through to our network in the UK. These people are coming across with jobs and needing places to rent or needing places to live in. Some of them is interesting, the Sutton Coldfield office of Century 21, they were taking Hong Kong Chinese for years let, a whole year's rent in advance, paid, and then during that year they would find somewhere to live and then move out. And so this is you end up with a situation where you could have an excellent tenant for a year, as I say, rent in advance for a year, and then have these people then buying locally, and often then reletting their property to, if you like, the next wave of coming in. And I think we need to be concentrating on liaising with the other global network of Century 21, talking to them in their own country, and then assisting them in this transition. And to that extent, what I want to be really focusing on within the UK is getting people with the right language skills, having that dialogue, and then, if you like, using them to funnel to the local branch network, the local franchisees, that they can then assist with finding the right homes, whether to let or for sale.
Yeah. So I see. I think what I'm getting from this is, as well, here, is that as an agent, if you're not part of an international network, then you're potentially going to miss out on these opportunities. And this is where our brand in particular stands out from the crowd, doesn't it?
Oh, without a shadow of doubt. I mean, the fact is, Century 21 has 14,000 offices across the world. Other international brands have a few hundred. And the simple fact of the matter is, we should be leveraging that network in order to supply good quality leads to our franchise network, and no other network in the UK of franchised offices can do that. No other estate agent organization can do that in the UK because it simply does not have the global reach that Century 21 does. I've mentioned Albania a couple of times. Century 21 is the largest estate agency network in Albania. They have 12 offices in the capital, Tirana, alone. The only brand, if you are Albanian and coming into this country to work, that you will recognize walking down a high street in the UK is Century 21.
Yeah.
Therefore, it is completely logical for somebody who's wanting to move into franchise estate agency to take our brand. It's relatively well documented that we're in a trying time from a market perspective in the UK. Not all areas, but by and large, we're seeing prices dropping. We're seeing properties hanging around for longer, and it's going to be a market that's going to need to be worked a lot harder than maybe for the last couple of years. That said, if you have a steady stream of people coming through your door or coming to you electronically because they have to buy or let because they're moving into this country, for these people, interest rates are relatively irrelevant. If they are coming in to buy in central London, they are probably cash purchasers. If they are coming in from some of these areas such as Hong Kong, they are probably cash purchasers. They probably don't even know what the interest rates are in the UK. And on that basis, they can be the lifeblood in a market that is struggling. And if you have this steady stream, you can go to a landlord and say, actually, yes, put your property with us to let, because we've got a steady stream of people coming in to rent, be they Chinese students doing a PhD course for the next 3 years. Yeah. And a number of these sort of mature students, very, very common for them to be paying a year's rent in advance.
Yeah.
So certainly it's leveraging that global reach for our franchisees that will make an enormous difference to their businesses and completely make us stand out from the crowd to any other estate agency branch.
Yeah. And it helps our sellers as well with our global reach via our Century 21 global website. Because I think, as a journey for a purchase begins, everyone looks online, and I don't necessarily think it matters what country you're in. The first thing you're going to look at is what sort of house can I get in that area for my money. So for sellers who have properties sitting around and you're thinking about, shall I change agent? Shall I not change agent? I think it's a good thing to do, particularly taking into consideration what you've said. Some advice might be, have a look at your local agent. Which one can get your property the furthest away?
Oh, completely, yes. And whilst in this country, we're all going to try Zoopla or Rightmove first, the fact of the matter is, if you are a potential purchaser and you're sitting in Europe or the Far East, you do not even know what Rightmove or Zoopla is. You will go to the brand that you recognise, and that will be Century 21. Because whilst Rightmove has some level of international presence, the fact of the matter is, it is not the leading search engine in any other country than the UK. So whilst it will have the odd page on France or Spain, it's not recognised in France and Spain in the same way as it is in the UK. What is recognised is the individual brands of estate agents. And that's where Century 21 will be head and shoulders in areas like the Far East above any other brand.
Yeah. So in regards to our vision, Century 21, put our Century 21 hats back on again. What do you see happening in the next year or so in terms of this particular project for us? What do you think is the best way forward for us to maximise this?
Excuse me. What we're going to be doing in the next year is setting up an international office in London. It will be staffed by a variety of people with language skills to deal with their, if you like, their reflective home territories. So we are already in discussions with Mexico, Hong Kong, Portugal, Albania, and India, where people can actually contact from those countries somebody sitting in the UK. They can explain in their own language, their own dialect, what the systems are, what the processes are in the UK for renting or for buying, and then it would discuss areas and then funnel that person through to the local office. As having that international office, we will have, if you like, desks dedicated to individual countries, and then use it as a for the leads and inquiries to the Century 21 network in the UK.
So I think that's important, isn't it? A smooth process, smooth transaction, making people feel at home, even though they're thousands of miles away. Somebody they can speak to, being able to trust. That sounds exciting for our brand, definitely. Just aside from that, our own brand, Century 21 UK, where do you see us if I was to give you a crystal ball and you were able to look into it and say, next 24 months, what do you think our biggest what's going to be where will we be as a brand? What would you like to see?
I can imagine us as a brand opening more franchise offices in some of the larger metropolitan areas that we are not in today, very much driven by these international links and the international office that we've set up in London, so that if, for instance, we have a host of inquiries from Far East students to go to, say, Leeds as a university city, then we should be able to find somebody who wants to have have an office, a franchise in Leeds. I think we'll be seeing more city centre offices across the country in big areas that we are not currently represented in. Manchester, Glasgow, Edinburgh, Newcastle, Leeds, areas like that.
Yeah.
I think we will also see more offices in central London, being very much driven by the overseas buyers, as I've mentioned, because we've become the recognised brand to deal with. And so I think it's going to be exciting times.
Absolutely. Sounds like it's going to be already. Nick, thank you very much for your time. It's always a pleasure to spend some time with you talking about other things. So thank you very much. I know you're a very, very busy man. You're off to London very soon to catch up with our franchisees, Peggy and Andrea. So Peggy will be the star of our next podcast. She does know this. So once again, thank you, Nick. Thanks for your time. Really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Bye.